Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to day 4 of box plots. Today in this video, we are going to be learning how to compare box plots. So we're getting to the end, and so what we're gonna find is this lesson really does cover a lot of the things that we've covered up until this point. So it really does include all of the things that we have addressed. So we're gonna start by doing a really quick review on some of the things that we've discussed up to this point, all right? And so we have a box plot. Another way that a box plot is referred to is the 5-point summary, because in a box plot, there are 5 points that are labeled, okay? And so I need you to label each of these. The first one is the minimum, okay? The first one is the minimum. Another name for the minimum is the lower extreme, okay? So we have the minimum and the lower extreme. The next point on our box plot is called the lower quartile, okay? We have the lower quartile. Another name or another way that the lower quartile is referred to is Q1, all right? Next, in the middle of our box plot, we have the median, okay? The median. Okay, another way we could refer to the median is Q2. Very seldomly, you probably haven't seen that referred to, but another name for it is Q2. Next is the upper quartile. Okay, the upper quartile is the fourth point. Okay, and that is also referred to as Q3. Right, that is the upper quartile. And then lastly, we have our maximum, okay? Maximum, which is also can be referred to as the upper extreme, okay? And so this is what we have talked about in this is the 5-point summary for box plots, all right? And so please excuse that bell. I know that was probably loud in your ears, but this is the 5-point summary. Another thing, so if I was to answer some questions, right, we've identified, all right, if I ask you, what is the upper quartile, right? Well, we look at our number line and then we figure out where does that fall, all right? For this example, the upper quartile would be 38, right? I could ask you, hey, what is the minimum value for this box plot? I would go to the minimum dot, and then I would look. And in this one, it is somewhere in the middle of 31 and 32, and so that would be 31.5. So 31.5 would be the minimum value, and we've been doing that, right? Being able to answer questions, looking at the box plot, all right? The only other thing that I want to point out, okay, is when we talked about this, when you have a box plot, we have 4 different sections, right? And so that's where kind of the quartile, remember I said the word quart should make us think about the number 4, all right? Think about 4 quarters in a dollar, right? And so for each quartile, all right, there is from one point to the next, that's a quartile. And of our data, 25% of the data falls within each, right? So it doesn't matter how long or how small it is, 25% of the data falls from one point to the next, right? And so from the lower quartile to the median is another 25%. And then from the median to the upper quartile is another 25%. And then lastly, from the upper quartile to the maximum is another 25%, okay? And so it is important for us to remember that each quartile from one point to the other is 25%, each part of our box plot, all right? And so this is a good quick summary of everything that we have talked about in box plots so far. Actually, I said everything. I did not cover everything. Let's talk about IQR, the interquartile range, and then the range. The IQR, if you will recall, right, to find that is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. In other words, it is Q3 minus Q1, all right? That is how we get our upper quartile. We are looking at the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. That's how we get our inner quartile range. So it's really kind of how wide that box is, all right? And then the other part that we've sort of talked about is just the range, okay? And so the range is when I just take it's the distance from the minimum to the maximum, all right? And so in order to find that, I just take the maximum and I subtract or minus or subtract the minimum, right? So it's just, in other words, it's the max minus the min, okay? And so that is how I find the range for my box plot, all right? Now, with that said, that is the recap of everything that we have covered, okay? And so now what we're gonna be doing in this lesson today is we're gonna be doing all of that, but this time our number line is gonna have two box plots. And we're gonna be comparing the two box plots. And what can happen is we can kind of get confused because there's two. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna give you some tips that you need to keep in mind when you are comparing box plots. And so here are a couple tips for you, all right? I want you to pay attention to the labels, all right? So you got to make sure that you are paying close attention to the labels. You know, for example, in the example that we're going to see, one of our box plots is going to be about girls. The other is going to be about boys. So we got to make sure that we're looking at, as we're answering different questions, that we're paying attention to the correct box plot for the correct label. All right. Other thing I want you to pay attention is I want you to pay attention to where each point, okay, where each point within the 5-point summary falls on the number line. Okay, and what I mean by that is, okay, I'm paying close attention to where if I'm looking at the minimum, where is the minimum, right, on the number line, right? So make sure that I'm paying close attention because you're going to be answering questions about the minimum, about the inner quartile range, about the maximum, about the upper. So you're going to be answering questions about all of them. So you really have to pay attention to which point it's talking about and where it falls on the number line. And then lastly, I want you to pay close attention to what the question is asking, okay? Then this is super important, right? Every question is going to be different. Again, it might be asking about different things. You have to pay close attention to what is the question asking me and make sure that I am answering that correctly, all right? So with that said, here's my tips for how to compare box plots. And now let's spend a little time comparing them, all right? So we have this box plot, and on this box plot, we have the height of girls and boys in inches, right? So I'm going to pay close attention. These are my heights, right? For the top one, these are girls, these are boys, and again, I'm paying attention, all right? And so for this set of questions, all we're going to be doing is we're just going to answer whether or not it is true or false, all right? And this is going to allow us to get some practice with comparing. All right, so let's look at the first one. It says 50% of the boys fall between 66 and 70 inches tall. Okay, so I'm looking at the boys, and then it says fall between 66 and 70, 50%. All right, well, we got to remember that each section is 25%. So each of these is 25%, right? So again, I'm looking at 66 to 70, right? And there's only 25% of the boys' data that falls in between that. So again, it's from 66 to 70, it's only one part of the box plot, one quartile. So the answer for that one is false, okay? That is not true. And why, right? I want us to justify each of our answers because only 25% of the boys are between 66 and 70 inches tall, okay? Let's look at the next one. It says 25% of the girls are taller than 69 inches. Okay, so again, I got to make sure now I went from looking at the boys, now I'm looking at the girls. So again, I want you to to remind you, I got to make sure I'm looking at the correct box plot, paying attention to the labels, right? So now I'm looking at the girls. Well, again, remember, each of these is 25%. Okay. Okay, and then it says it's taller than 69. So I'm going to 69 on the number line, and I'm saying, okay, how much of the box plot for the girls is above 69? Okay. And it's 25% because there's one part of the box plot. So the answer for letter B is true. Right? And the reason is because, right, there's only one part of the box plot, only one section of the box plot is above 69. So, because only one quartile is above 69. Okay? So, again, just to remind you, again, you just got to pay close attention to what the question is asking and kind of break it down. All right? Let's look at the next one. The next one, it says the lower quartile for the girl's height is equal to the median of the boy's height. All right? So, all right, the lower quartile for the girl's height is equal to the median for the boy's height. So, I got to find the lower quartile for the girls. So, I go to the girls. This is the lower quartile for the girls, right? And then the median for the boys. Well, this is the boys, and this is the median for the boys because it's the middle, right? Lower quartile, this is the median, and it says that they are equal, right? Is that true or false? Well, hopefully you see that the answer is true there, okay? And it is true because the lower quartile for the girls is 69, and then the median, 66 rather, and then the median for the boys' height is also 66. So the answer is true because the lower quartile for the girls and the median for the boys is both 64, right? It is 66. Sorry, I'm getting my numbers all mixed up there. But it is 66 for both the boys, for the median for the boys, and then the lower quartile for the girls. All right? Hey, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause, and I want you to just attempt to answer the next questions on your own, okay? I understand the next question is talking about interquartile range, and it's talking about maximum, but you can use the notes over here to help you. But I want you to see, you've seen me do a couple. I want you to pause it, and I want you to attempt to answer the next 4 on your own. And after you've attempted to answer them on your own, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Feel free to ask a question. But after you've done, I want you to press play, and then I want you to continue to check your answers to see if you got them correct or not. So at this time, go ahead and pause it, and then check your answers once you are done. All right, so I'm going to just give you the answers really quickly. Hopefully you've done it. All right, so for letter D, the answer is false. And it is false because the interquartile range for the boys is 5. Okay, because we did 70 minus 65, and that got us 5. And then the IQR for the girls, okay, that is 3s because it's 69 minus 66, and that gives us 3. All right, so it is not smaller, it is larger. Okay, it's greater. All right. For letter E, the answer is also false. All right, and it is false because the max for the girls, is 70, and then the max for the boys is 73. Okay, again, 70 for the girls, 73. So the maximum height for the girls is not greater, it's less than that for the boys. All right, and then letter F, the answer is true. All right, the answer is true because the boys' range, again, to find the range, you subtract the maximum minus the minimum, and that gives you 12. That gives you 12 for the boys, and then the girls' range, okay, the girls' range is 70 minus 64, and that gives me 6, all right? And then lastly, for G, the answer is false, okay? And it is false because the girls' upper quartile is 69, and then the boys' upper quartile is 70, okay? So, with that said, those are the answers. If there's any question that you are still confused, you don't understand how I got it, please raise your hand, ask questions. But hopefully in this lesson, you've learned how to compare box plots. And friends, the reality is every question is going to be different. So I can't necessarily say follow these steps. What you got to do is you really have to make sure you pay close attention to what the question is asking you and make sure that you're looking at the correct part of the box plot. So hopefully that helps. Thank you so much for your attention and good luck.